This is Operation Yanez to a title shot. Adrian Yanez just got a big win against Davey Grant at UFC Vegas 43. It was the biggest win of his career so far, making him 4-0 in the bantamweight division, and this guy is very, very marketable. Every single fight that he has is amazing to watch. It's either a war back and forth like he had with Davey Grant, or he finishes a person in spectacular fashion like he has done with his last 3 wins before this one. He's a very marketable guy, and we need to get him towards the top of the bantamweight division, but how are we going to do it? I believe there's 3 different ways we can do this. I'm going to go through the multiple career paths that Adrian Yanez can choose in his career moving forward, because these are the most important moves that he's going to make in his life ever, maybe, and I thought I'd break it down in today's video. Over here we've got the safety lane. This is a way that Adrian Yanez can get to the top of the division the safest way possible, the most calculated way possible, the best matchups he possibly could get as he moves his way through the bantamweight rankings. Here, down here, is the fast track option. Very important one here. You can get him straight to the top with a couple of good wins against the right opponents, maybe. I don't recommend this option, but if they do want to get Adrian Yanez right to the top of the bantamweight division, this is the way you go about it. And over here, we've got the star power option. If you want to build the name value of Adrian Yanez and give him the biggest names he possibly can get whilst moving up the rankings in the bantamweight division, that's how you're going to go about things. It might not be the most educated way of doing things, but it's definitely going to get him a lot of attention, and he'll be fighting a lot of big names as well. But let's start straight away with the safety lane first. This is the most boring one out of all of them. And we start immediately with Montel Jackson, okay, and I'm going to move Adrian Yanez down here as we go along the video, and keep placing the new opponents in whenever he wants to take them on, in stages as he goes through his career. But first of all, I think his first step is Montel Jackson in the bantamweight division. I'm going to be honest here. The Davey Grant fight was extremely close, okay? And I feel like Adrian Yanez could be something big in the bantamweight division, but I don't think taking one more fight outside the rankings before we move him into the rankings against the top 15 of the bantamweight division. This is not the middleweight division's top 15, where there's some people there that just can't even fight whatsoever. This is the top 15 of the bantamweight division. They're all extremely good fighters top to bottom. So, in my opinion, the most correct way and most calculated way we can go about this is to give him one more fight outside the rankings against Montel Jackson, hold him up for about maybe like 6 months of his career, take a little bit of a break over the holidays, have Christmas, have New Year's, come back against Montel Jackson in March of next year or something like that, maybe February, late February of next year, and then we turn around to the next fight in his career afterwards, which is when he'll finally be ready, in my opinion, for a ranked opponent after a big win against a streaking contender himself in Montel Jackson on a 2-fight winning streak. And let's not forget, Montel Jackson, a stand-up opponent, likes to box with his opponents, doesn't really shoot too many takedowns or anything like that. Adrian Yanez has got a very good style matchup for him in Montel Jackson, because Montel Jackson's a stand-up guy. He's not going to be shooting for takedowns. He's got big power in his hands, but Adrian Yanez has got a great chin. Montel Jackson boxes more than anything else, and Adrian Yanez loves to box. A perfect matchup for him, but if he does get past Montel Jackson, he needs to move on to his next opponent inside the rankings, which I believe could be Marlon Moraes. Again, do you notice a trend here? Another stand-up opponent for Adrian Yanez. A great matchup for him. A guy who gasses out as the fight goes on, and as we see with Adrian Yanez, he seems to get better as fights go on. He's had a 3rd round KO in his career, a brutal 3rd round KO. He also had a decision win here against Davey Grant, where he did get better as the fight went on. The only clear round I thought he definitely won was the 3rd round. I think it was the clearest round of the fight so far, or the clearest round of the fight in general was round 3. I feel like Marlon Moraes slows down as the fight goes on. Adrian Yanez gets better as the fight goes on. Moraes has got a lot of power and he likes to look for KOs. Adrian Yanez has got great head movement and he rolls with shots well and he takes shots very well. He's got a granite chin on him. And Marlon Moraes also is a stand-up opponent, so he's going to stand with Adrian Yanez. It's also a ranked opponent. I believe Marlon Moraes is ranked number 9 in the bantamweight division right now. So this would put Adrian Yanez, after a win against Montel Jackson maybe, right into the top 10 of the bantamweight division, looking towards the top 5. And if he does get past a guy like Marlon Moraes, who, let's face it, is a little bit chinny at this point of his career, maybe Adrian Yanez could land a KO blow and get a quick finish against Marlon Moraes in International Fight Week on the July card, on the pay-per-view card in July that they're going to do, no doubt. I don't doubt that at all. I think they're going to do a July pay-per-view card with all the big names and prospects on there. I think Adrian Yanez should be a name on there, maybe headlining the prelims against Marlon Moraes, maybe second on the prelims against Marlon Moraes on a pay-per-view card. If he does get past Moraes and puts himself in the top 10, he's then looking at another fight for him that makes sense in my opinion, which would be Rob Font maybe at some point in his career. Rob Font maybe loses to Aldo and needs to fight against another opponent. I think this is a great matchup again for Adrian Yanez because guess what? He's a stand-up opponent. He likes to box and not really do anything else. He rarely shoots a takedown. He'll throw a couple of kicks here and there, but Adrian Yanez will throw a couple of kicks here and there. So I think this is a great matchup for him. Not going to shoot a takedown. Little bit of an older guy. He's got a crazy amount of reach, but Yanez has got great head movement, great distance control, and he's great with the boxing as well. So I think if he wants a very approachable way to get to the top 5 of the bantamweight division and maybe justify himself a title shot, he could beat Montel Jackson in March of next year, February of next year, beat Marlon Moraes in July or August of next year, and then towards the end of the year, fight a guy like Rob Font, who's maybe coming off a loss in the top 5 or coming off a win in the top 5, but he just needs one more for his title shot because there's a massive logjam right now in that division. If Yanez moves fast, he can move right up these rankings. And speaking of moving fast, I feel like we need to move on to the fast track option, which is the first step in his fast track option. Frankie Edgar. Edgar has stated, and I think stupidly, that he's not going to retire. I don't know why he doesn't want to retire, but he's not going to retire. And if he's not going to retire, you're on a losing streak right now, Frankie Edgar. I believe he's lost 3 in a row, and arguably he's lost 4 in a row as well, by the way, because he didn't beat Pedro Munoz. It's the only win that he has right now in the bantamweight rankings. He didn't beat Pedro Munoz whatsoever, in any way at all. He's lost to Corey Sandhagen brutally. Just lost to Marlon Moraes as well. I mean, it's only 3 in a row, so I do feel like they'll give him another chance here to fight another contender. And if you're the UFC, you're looking at Frankie Edgar in a very vulnerable position in his career, begging for an opportunity to even fight again in the company because he doesn't want to be cut and doesn't want to retire from the sport yet, even though he's just been KO'd again. And Adrian Yanez is one of those guys where if you want to just chuck him up and give him a ranked opponent, who, by the way, is only, I believe, ranked number 11, 12, 13 in the bantamweight division, so it's a very approachable matchup to make. They're on similar schedules. Edgar just got KO'd on the last pay-per-view card. Yanez is going to need some time to recover with his ear problem that he had against Davey Grant, plus he just went for a war. They could turn these two around in March, April of next year, and get Adrian Yanez right into the rankings against an approachable matchup immediately, rather than holding him back with a Montel Jackson-esque fight, and risk giving him a guy like Frankie Edgar, who's risky because he can grapple, and maybe Adrian Yanez gets out-grappled and we figure out that, hey, this guy doesn't really have the best ground game. I don't think that's the case. I've watched him defend takedowns against guys like Miles Johns and other good opponents on the regional scene, but it's always good to find out if he has got good grappling. They could give him Frankie Edgar, and if he does beat Frankie Edgar, I'm telling you, if Corey Sandhagen stays inactive for a little while, the winner of Font versus Aldo is going to move above him in the rankings. Someone else might move above him in the rankings. And before you know it, Corey Sandhagen could be number 5 in the bantamweight division coming off a loss, looking for another opponent to get himself back on track before he earns his title elimination bout. And I feel like maybe Adrian Yanez could be the guy for Corey Sandhagen. Maybe that could happen. It's a good matchup for him. I think Corey Sandhagen would like the idea of that matchup because Corey Sandhagen is basically like a Randy Costa with footwork, essentially. So maybe it would be like if you're Corey Sandhagen, you're looking at the Randy Costa fight and thinking, I can do what Randy Costa did, but I can do it for like 3 straight rounds. I can do it for 5 straight rounds. In the bantamweight division, I've got a longer range than Randy Costa. I can do better than Randy Costa against Adrian Yanez, and I can keep it going and not let Yanez get back into the fight. So I think Corey Sandhagen, number 5 in a couple of months' time when the rankings shift around a little bit, because technically he is on a 2-fight losing streak in the top 5 of the bantamweight division. Adrian Yanez might be ranked number 10, number 11, 5 versus 10, 5 versus 11. It makes more sense when you look at things like that. They could make that matchup next and get Adrian Yanez right into the top 5 with 2 fights. Let's move on to the star power option. Now, this is a bit more of a fun one, and I think this could be one that they go with, but I think this is a stupid way of doing things, but he could rack up a lot of big names on his resume if he does go down this direction. Let's start straight away with his first opponent in the star power area. It's already kind of been established. Sugar Sean O'Malley has already called out Adrian Yanez. He said if he beats Raulian Paiva, he wants to fight Yanez in March of next year. I guess he wants to stay active, but he's got to get through Paiva first. Okay? Got to get through Paiva first, because Paiva is 21-3 as a pro. He's not a bad fighter in any way. He just technically got his hand raised against Kyler Phillips, who beat Song Yudong quite convincingly, by the way. This is not an easy test for Sean O'Malley, so I don't even... It worries me that he's starting to say, like, yeah, this guy in March after I deal with Paiva. Like, dude, deal with Paiva. deal with Paver first. It's the biggest test of his career so far, outside of the Marlon Vera fight, and that one didn't go too well for him. So, Adrian Yanez versus Sean O'Malley, huge fight to make, and Adrian Yanez, Sean O'Malley, they'd build some beef. They'd be on the main card of a pay-per-view. Easily. Open up the main card with these two on the card. I don't think O'Malley's going to want to fight Yanez after he beats Paver if he does, because I think he'll be looking up the rankings. I just think he wants another name in mind, so if the UFC don't offer him more money for a top 10 opponent, he can just say, oh, I'll just take on this guy. I've already built some promo for it. I've already established a dialogue that people are going to have over me fighting him. I've already made the MMA Guru do a video where I'm included in it and talk about the matchup for people that watch the videos that he makes. Like, he's already set the promo for that fight to happen, for if he doesn't get offered more money if he fights a top 10 opponent. And I think it's a great one, because they'd shit talk back and forth. Yanez has already got receipts on O'Malley. I think he broke down his entire medical history at one point. Like, he went into the real background, like his great-great-grandfather. Like, Adrian Yanez knows everything about O'Malley, it seems. Really did do his homework on O'Malley. Broke him down brutally in, like, a psychological exam in his post-fight interview that he had with MMA Junkie. And, yeah. Adrian Yanez versus Sean O'Malley could be a big fight to make. Two big names. I don't think they should do it, because they both could be in the rankings soon and they could fight each other for a top 5 bout. They could even be fighting each other for a title elimination bout. They could even be fighting each other in a couple of years for a title shot. For a title fight. Sorry, one of them's got the belt, the other one's defending it. One of them's got the belt, the other one's trying to get it. That could be the matchup. I don't think they should waste this one now that they're doing with Jack Shaw versus Umar Nurmagomedov and Ilya Topuria versus Movsar Evloev, but that's what makes the UFC so good. Maybe they will make this matchup next. Moving on to another fight. If Adrian Yanez just does get past Sean O'Malley, he'll be number 15 in the bantamweight division. Then you give him the Frankie Edgar bout, which is another big name that he could get on his resume, moving himself up the rankings into the top 10 of the division against a guy like Frankie Edgar, who's probably not even going to be ready to fight by then as well. So if Adrian Yanez can get Sean O'Malley in February or March, I reckon Edgar's at least going to take a little bit of time off, wait until July or June or something like that. So if Yanez does get past O'Malley in this star power route of doing things, then try and get that Frankie Edgar name on your resume on another main card of a pay-per-view, or maybe the co-main event of a fight night or something like that. And if you do get past Frankie Edgar, the last option in the star power route of doing things is going to have to be Jose Aldo, who will definitely still be around, because I don't see this guy retiring ever in his life. He seems to completely enjoy his job. Beyond all else, I don't see him retiring if he loses to Rob Font. So if Jose Aldo is around in the top 5 at the bantamweight division, still looking to get back on track, because let's face it, Aldo is always 2 decent wins away from a title shot at any point in his career. So if he doesn't get it done against Rob Font in December and wants to wait around and come back in June or July, or maybe he waits even longer and has a big comeback or something like that, or maybe he fights someone in July, gets back in the win column and just needs that one more win against a top 10 opponent to get him towards that title shot, Adrian Yanez could be the guy at that time, and that would give him the best legacy he possibly could get against the biggest names in the division. O'Malley, Edgar, Aldo, crossed off in 3 fights. Great 3 names to have on your resume. The fast track option, very dangerous. Edgar straight away. Dangerous matchup there because Edgar's a wrestler, and he showed that he was actually doing good against Marlon Vera in those first 2 rounds. Corey Sandhagen next up is a tough matchup. It would get him right into the top 5, top 3 of the division, immediately into title shot consideration. And I think they should do the safety lane. This is the perfect way of doing things. Montel Jackson's a very winnable matchup for him. I think this is the route that he should go down. Take on Montel Jackson, improve your contract even more, maybe get another performance bonus if you perform well, or a fight of the night bonus if you go to war. Prepare yourself, take some more time. You're a young guy in the bantamweight division, you're in no rush whatsoever. Get the win, take a couple of months off, come back around in maybe like July, International Fight Week against Marlon Moraes, a chinny guy who's going to have a lot of time off, going to be on the downslope of his career. He just took a lot of damage again against Merab Dvalishvili, so his chin's not going to be better than ever. Adrian Yanez maybe finishes Montel Jackson, finishes a chinny and inactive Marlon Moraes, who's been out for a while recovering from his loss, who doesn't really have a choice on the matchup because he's on a losing streak, and then go in there against a guy like Rob Font, who's probably still going to be fighting at the time, might be a bit older at the time and demotivated coming off a loss, and that would put him right into the top 5 of the bantamweight division to maybe take on like a Dillashaw coming off a loss, the loser of Aldo versus Yan, something along those lines, and then we'll get him the title shot in the bantamweight division. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button up there. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. This is Operation Yanez to a title shot, and these are the various ways they could get him there. Toodle pip.